Clima Veneta is a European manufacturer. They're based out of Italy. They've been a pioneer in developing hydronic solutions for the built environment for almost 50 years now. In the Canadian climate, we're unlikely to ever completely eliminate natural gas as part of our buildings because the Canadian climate is so cold. With air-to-water heat pump technologies, you can produce either hot water or chilled water with one single machine. With the hydronic heat pump solutions, by taking a hybrid approach, we're able to use the heat pump when it makes sense and still have an auxiliary heating source such as a gas boiler when that's needed to run.
I would say any type of application could benefit from this. Could be decentralizing the air-to-water heat pump systems, having localized air-to-water heat pump systems for spaces, projects like hospitals or residential buildings.
We're proud to be introducing Clima Veneta here in Canada, contributing to solving some of the challenges meeting our climate change targets while still offering reliable and comfortable heating solutions.
Hello and welcome to this edition of 30 Mechanical Minutes, virtual content for real-time professionals. My name is Doug Picklyk, editor of HPAC Magazine, and we're premiering this episode at the Modern Hydronics Summit 2021. Today we're talking about Canada's Energy Efficiency Act and more specifically, Natural Resources Canada's Amendment 15 to the Energy Efficiency Regulations. I'm joined by two members of the Canadian Hydronics Council to discuss this topic. First, I would like to acknowledge our sponsor for this session, Climaventa Products, makers of the NRCan series of reversible heat pump chillers for buildings, a division of Mitsubishi Electric. Thank you for your support. So, with me here today are Dave Hughes and Tom Gervais. And as I mentioned, they're here representing the Canadian Hydronics Council. And together we hope to explain what's going on and the next steps for the industry with respect to Amendment 15. First, here's a little background on Dave and Tom. Dave is currently a technical advisor with the Canadian Institute of Plumbing and Heating. He has over 40 years of experience in the plumbing and heating industry and has worked with gas boiler systems, solar thermal water heating systems, radiant floor heating systems, hydronic system controls, residential and commercial hydronic system design. Needless to say, he's been around. Dave has also served as chair of the Canadian Hydronics Council and vice chair of the CSA B214 Technical Committee. Tom is the Director of Specification and Product Development with LAARS Heating, Bradford White Company. A native of Southern Ontario, Tom's a mechanical engineer and has spent his working career learning about all things hot water. During his 25-year tenure with LAARS, he's progressed through various technical and sales roles, contributing to the highly energy efficient and reliably warm and comfortable indoor environments that Canadians so enjoy when it gets cold outside. Thank you both for being here. So let's get started. Amendment 15 to the Energy Efficiency Regulations was published in the Canada Gazette, June 12th, 2019. Dave, can you tell us generally what changes this energy efficiency amendment proposes for residential gas boiler installations and specifically any dates that need to be met?
Firstly, there's more than just boilers targeted in Amendment 15. In fact, the amendment introduces and updates minimum energy performance standards, which the industry calls as MEPS. It's one of those terms that everybody likes, those acronyms. So, which are testing standards, verification, reporting requirements to improve the energy efficiency of 12 heating and ventilating product categories. The amendment affects residential and commercial product categories as well. And some of the other ones that we found are listed in the Amendment 15 are everything from electric and gas furnaces, gas fireplaces, gas and oil boilers, both commercial and household. They don't even call them residential anymore. Tankless water heaters and heat recovery ventilators. So there's quite a range of products that are actually targeted in Amendment 15. Now, specifically, Amendment 15 is designed to introduce a minimum energy performance standard, like the MEPS, like I was mentioning, and introduce more stringent minimum energy performance standards and update testing standards for product categories within that we're dealing with the boilers. So it introduces the verification requirements, reporting requirements, and testing standards for one new product category. So household gas boilers. Now, these household gas boilers provide heat to a home and can use either hot water or steam. So it affects both hot water and steam boilers when we're looking at it, and distribute the heat through that space, which everybody that's here watching the hydronics should know all about that. So they use propane or natural gas and an input rating of less than, well, this metric thing, 87.92 kilowatts or 300,000 BTUs an hour. So for household gas boilers intended for hot water systems that are manufactured after July 1st, 2023, the amendment sets the MEPS at the condensing technology level, equivalent to the current Energy Star performance. And Energy Star is the one out of the States there. So gas boilers, basically the days of condensing or non-condensing boilers are coming to an end, as these regulations will allow for only condensing appliances. So household gas boilers greater than 300,000 BTUs will see the increase to 90% AFUE starting in 2023. So household oil burners, and there's still some of those around there, even though oil is getting a little bit pushed out by natural gas, and even in Eastern Canada, that we see that they'll have an input rating less than, once again, 300,000 BTUs. So for a household, an oil-fired burner or boiler manufactured on or after January 15, 2021, which was just passed, the amendment sets the MEPS at levels that will apply to the same date in the US. So basically, these new regulations harmonize with the proposed DOE regulations in the US, and they increase to a minimum of 86% AFUE starting in 2023. So,
okay, so that's on the residential side.
that's the residential side.
Or households, sorry. Okay. And Tom, I'm going to come to you for what are the primary concerns for the hydronics industry on the commercial side when it comes to some of these details contained within this Amendment 15. My understanding is there are a few more issues to be dealt with on this side.
Yeah, Doug, and I think perhaps one of the most important things that all of us who are participants, all of us who are stakeholders in the industry need to know is if we're communicating with customers now, all we say is we're taking the 15th. You hear it a lot in the United States that you get to take the 5th. We're taking the 15th now. All right, so on the commercial boiler side, and commercial boilers, as people know, that is outside of the scope of AFUE. And as Dave was already saying, AFUE is 300,000 BTUs and below. And that's really the household space. Commercial boilers, heretofore, federally in Canada, have not been considered an energy consuming appliance. They have not been regulated yet. All right, so we as Canadians have been basically relying on what has occurred in the United States. United States has had various MEPS for commercial boilers for some time, but we in Canada, they've just never been regulated. And this is, now that we're taking the 15th, this is where they're starting to be regulated. Outside of 300,000, greater than 300,000 BTU input, commercial boilers are going to have to be condensing. Okay, so just like with residential boilers, commercial boilers are going to have to be condensing. And that date is the beginning of 2025. All right, so it's let me make sure I get this right. It's January 1st, 2025, and that is boilers, 300,000 or 301,000 BTUs, I guess we could say, up to 10 million, 10 million BTUs. Is that right? Up to 10 million BTUs. So when Dave is building his annex and he needs an 11 million BTU boiler, he doesn't have to put in a condensing boiler. He can get away with something that's near condensing. But I guess for the rest of us mere mortals, 10 million BTUs and below, boilers are going to have to be condensing. All right, and starting at the very beginning of the year, January 1st, 2025, that's the situation. And to clarify something, Doug, with those dates, the date is the production date of the piece of equipment. All right. So if our industry, wholesalers, and other participants in the industry have product in stock before the effective date as laid out in Amendment 15, it's still cool to sell and install those. But after the fact, so if it's a Canadian producer producing something in Canada, you're going to have to comply. And if it's coming from overseas or from America over lakes, then we're going to have to comply. So if it's January 15th and so there's a contractor somewhere that needs to put a million BTU boiler into somebody's building, but that million BTU boiler was built in November 2024. That's kosher. All right, that's still allowed. But if it's built after January 1st, 2025 in Canada, it must be condensing. And that to me, that's a big change. Because that's not something that we're dealing with now. Commercial boilers, like I say, haven't really been regulated federally until now. Certain provinces have had some MEPS put in place for a couple of years, but and we as industry watchers and industry participants, we do see that energy cost is an important thing for stakeholders, for people who are residents of these buildings or the property managers, et cetera. I think generally speaking, as Canadians, we do like to do the right thing, and we would like to design for efficiency and for optimizing our operating costs. And condensing boilers often contribute to that. They can certainly help solve that problem. But we all know, as industry professionals, who are participating in the summit, condensing boilers really only condense if they operate at temperatures that are conducive to condensing. So for natural gas boilers, we all know 130 Fahrenheit, 140 Fahrenheit. That's the maximum temperature for your system. And that's that's what the boilers need to operate at in order to condense. And if you've got high temperature systems, fin baseboard radiation, maybe some fan coils, something like that, then maybe the boilers aren't going to condense. And we just want to say here with Amendment 15 that as skilled trades, licensed professionals, practicing designers, whatever our role is, we would like to make sure that we do maximize the efficiency of these condensing boilers when they go in, just so that we can do the best for our customers, because these pieces of equipment are generally speaking, unfortunately, cost more money because of the nature of the materials that are in the heat exchanger. They have to resist the corrosive nature of flue gas condensate. And generally speaking, they have to be ASME certified pressure vessels, most places in Canada. So we can't make the damn things out of plastic, that you can get away with in other sides of things. So you're usually making these out of different materials, and it could be aluminum, could be cast iron, could be various grades of stainless. But none of that stuff is free. And as we come to you almost live, recorded here, but Q1 2021, steel prices doubled and material prices have risen tremendously in the last little while. So the condensing boilers do cost more money. Capital cost is usually more, and therefore to do the best for your customers, do whatever you can to make sure the things condense. All right.
So Tom, it sounds as though this is definitely having a direct impact on the manufacturers of the industry. This amendment, having to come out with these products themselves to make these products compliant. I'm just wondering, what is the direct effect you see it on the mechanical contractors who are going to be installing these products? What other changes is this going to bring about?
And that's an extremely important point. And the first, and just to clarify something else, the very first point I would want to make is, just like with what Dave was saying with household boilers, there is no differentiation between a project that's considered retrofit or a project that's new construction. All right. It's just, if we're selling these things into Canada, keep our buildings toasty, keep the showers warm, they got to be condensing. All right. So number one, that's important. New construction, there's going to be a design engineer involved, and it's new construction, and there's cranes, and access to the mechanical room is unfettered. Assuming you got some millions of bucks to run your crane, you can lift boilers into place and vent the things and do all that kind of thing. And that's occurring now, as we know, probably in just about every territory in Canada. That's fine. Retrofit, no, that's a different story. Okay, so retrofit, I'm sure we could all come up with some sort of nightmare doomsday scenario, but just a medium, middle of the road scenario. You've got some 10-story building, mechanical room was in the basement. Maybe there's some older technology there. The vents, we're going up the 10 stories and venting out of the top of the building. All of those vent systems are going to have to be replaced. All right, as industry professionals, we know condensing boilers, vented category 1, condensing boilers vented category 2 or category 4 cannot reuse the existing, B-vent chimney, category 1 chimney, or, goodness gracious, you might have Dave's he's becoming apoplectic. Where somebody get that guy, he needs to be resuscitated. You can't use a masonry chimney, unless it's lined with certified stainless steel or plastic, certified plastics in Canada. From a retrofit standpoint, first and foremost, all of the participants need to be aware that the venting systems are going to have to be changed to a certified vent system. And we as Canadians, we all know, goodness gracious, we certainly should know that in Canada we have to use certified vent material, and we know that the relevant standard is ULC S636, and we know that in ULC S636 there's different categories of vent material. There's white PVC plastic, which is good to like 149 Fahrenheit flue gas temperature from the units, and then we go all the way up to the certified stainless steels, and in between we've got CPVC and polypropylene. But B-vent is out. All right, when you're taking the 15th, B-vent is toast. You can't reuse the existing vent that was in that building, and that's no good. If you were to do that, because the flue gas is gonna more than likely condense at one point, and if the flue gas condenses, it is going to corrode that B-vent chimney, and besides the chimney eventually one day kind of collapsing, even worse, it could have a failure and lose integrity, and you could have flue gas into the space, and all kinds of dire scenarios come out of that, as we know. So especially for anybody that is a gas fitter. We know that in Canada, gas fitters are they're the licensed trade at the job, and there is liability, attached to being a licensed trade. So they, everybody needs to be careful and apply an abundance of caution to make sure you're doing the right thing with venting. So that, the certified vent systems, number one, I think are something that we need to watch out for. Number two, vent lengths is something that we need to watch out for. And, be it a household boiler, again, in Dave's 10 million B2 annex in the garden there, be it a household boiler or even, or a commercial boiler, the maximum vent length that you're allowed to vent these appliances is number one, it's limited generally. And number two, you kind of have to do as you're told by the manufacturer. The manufacturer gets all these appliances, pieces of equipment certified. And the manufacturer is going to say, with such and such a diameter vent, you can run it, so many feet. And people need to be careful that when they're doing a retrofit, you're installing a piece of equipment that can in fact be vented the distances you think it can be vented. And I would imagine a great many people, who are participating in this have had experience where they've, put some appliance somewhere, commercial boiler or water heater, or whatever, and they try to vent it, and it's like, good Lord, it's just not working. I have no place to vent this thing. I don't have enough vent length to be able to vent it, or whatever. And you need to think about that before you start this little, replacing some of this equipment, because just because something was vented in a 10-story building before and devent doesn't necessarily mean you can vent it. You can put this new condensing piece of equipment in there and vent it through the same, route to the outside of the building. And sometimes,
one other additional point to that is that if we have a bank of several boilers and one boiler goes down, so we only realistically have to replace one boiler. Now we've got the issue where we've got mixed venting types. So we've got a condensing boiler and non-condensing. We can't join those together. So it comes to a case where either we individually vent that condensing boiler and run the existing ones through the existing vent, but once again, then that vent is probably oversized for the other 2 or 3, whatever there is in there. So the venting issue is probably the biggest issue for all of this. It doesn't matter how it goes in. And once again, going out the sidewall, there's a lot of municipalities around Canada that sidewall venting is sort of really frowned upon because they don't want it infringing on other buildings.
And that's an especially good point. Again, household boilers or commercial boilers or just equipment in general, don't just assume that you could vent the thing horizontally out of a sidewall, because, as Dave says, perhaps the municipality that you're in, or whatever the local jurisdiction is, they may have some ordinance that disallows that. And I would just put a plug in for the manufacturers' representatives, and often the manufacturers themselves. These people are in the territory and they're familiar often with because if it's happened to one installer, it's probably happened to many more, and reps are that's unfortunately they're in the thick of it, and they do take those calls. And I would just say, apply an abundance of caution in these situations. If there's any doubt on how to vent these things, give it some consideration before we're going down that road. And I'm not a contractor, so I don't have the experience of facing some building owner, and saying, ooh, venting this thing is going to be a little bit difficult. But again, you could always take the 15th, just say, I've taken the 15th, it's fine,
Of course.
But yeah, venting is to me anyway, that's the biggest, that's perhaps the biggest issue I think that people need to consider. Other than to say, as we were saying off the top, if you do put in a condensing, or when you are putting in these condensing boilers, do try to take some steps to keep the system operating temperature, such that the boiler condenses. And, aggressive outdoor reset curves can help with that, or perhaps there's going to be some, kind of small plumbing change, but unlikely, but you don't know, maybe some plumbing change that would help keep the temperature low. But whatever we can do, I mean, we're all in this together. Cliche 101 from just pulling that from the pandemic headline, sorry, but we're all in this together, and we want to do whatever we can to keep these units running as efficiently as we possibly can, and that'll do the best for the owner. And then ultimately, what the goals of Amendment 15 are, will help get to that.
Right, that is the goal, obviously, so that these products will become more compliant with the amendment specifications, ultimately meaning more efficiency in homes and buildings. Is there always a direct correlation here between?
Well, there as we were saying, I guess the short answer is no, there isn't. You can put a condensing boiler in and then leave the windows in your house open all winter, and you'll probably use more energy than if you close the houses. energy efficiency is, one must apply a holistic approach to achieving, energy efficiency. And as we know, with NRCan's energy efficiency amendments, often energy efficiency is directly relatable to carbon emissions. That helps the country, kind of achieve various stated goals or aspirational goals, et cetera. But, putting a condensing boiler into an application that won't allow it to condense, generally speaking, doesn't really get you very far. It's better than a campfire, but perhaps it's not, really addressing or achieving the same level of it's not getting us to the goal as well as, putting in a condensing appliance and applying it properly.
Yeah, it leaves us down back in the non-condensing range, the 84% efficient. So instead of like a 96%. So
yeah, that's exactly the case. And again, we're in this together. We are, none of us are writing the rules. I mean, Doug, unless you are on the side, you're not telling us about it. But we are complying with the rules. The household boilers, that's coming up pretty quick, middle of 2023, considering, we're getting close to the end of Q1 2021. Like it's almost upon us. 2025 will be here very quickly. We know that you name the jurisdiction in Canada, I will guarantee you there are designers working on new construction projects now that probably won't, need equipment hoisted onto the roof until sometime in 2025. And if any of you are, if any of you are dealing with designers, it's important to promulgate, that Amendment 15 does exist. It's been published. And goodness, don't if you see a designer, writing something down that's not 90% or better, let them know and be like, dude, that's not really appropriate. You're going to have to, you're going to have to put in something that's condensing.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. I know there was, offline, we had a little bit of a discussion with respect to water heater MEPS as well. I know this isn't necessarily hydronics and boiler related, but maybe when we talk combi or tankless systems, could you just briefly touch on that? Because I know that has some implications, both household and commercial, I believe.
Yeah, now, so number one, tankless units, in fact, in Canada, what people consider a residential or a household, pardon me, tankless water heater, they got to be condensing now. Like that rule has, in fact, already kicked in. So unlike our esteemed learned colleagues south of the border, where you could sell, mid-efficient tankless units and hang them on the outside of the pool house there in Texas at minus 23 Celsius, let's ask, I wonder how that's working out for them. Anyway, that's a bit mean. In Canada, they got to be condensing now anyway, number one. Number two, I do think it is important that people are aware, stakeholders, you as the contractors, the design owners and the building owners especially, commercial water heaters, storage water heaters that are fired on gas or propane, they are part of Amendment 15. And the new construction MEPS means that water heaters must be condensing. All right, so if it's a new construction project, you're going to have to put in, your condensing water heater. If it's not a new construction project, and so there's a line there, if it's a retrofit job, okay, that's one thing. If it's a new construction job, it's one thing. If it's new construction, the heaters have to be condensing. And there's a lot of product on the market that I would imagine a great many of us are familiar with that they can accommodate that now. So it's not, I don't think it's going to be incredibly burdensome, other than, you need to be aware, you got to put in condensing units, and they've got the same venting considerations that need to be made as the boilers do. But if it's a retrofit project, the water heaters do not need to be condensing, which is interesting. The MEPS were pushed up a little bit, so that the retrofit units have to be a little bit more efficient, but they can still be vented, similar to the way older heaters were, and it's not mandatory that they should be condensing. If I can put a little personal comment in though. Water heaters run at low temperature and they can condense all the time. So my view is, at least from a sales standpoint, always start by saying, put in the condensing water heater. That is the most efficient thing you can do. And it's not as though you're going to be running the thing and it's not condensing. If you can sell a condensing water heater, that's the way to go. And you're doing everybody a favor, in my view. But not mandatory for retrofit. But new construction, people need to be aware that the water heaters are condensing. And I just, in the heat of the moment here, I was just forgetting the dates. But the water heater rules are kicking in at the same time as the household boiler rules, right? That's July 1st, 2023. So that is rapidly approaching. So if again, if you're on the design side and you're working with some designer and they're doing some commercial project, or it's a school or it's a building, or I don't know, whatever the project is, and you see that they're specifying non-condensing water heaters, raise the flag and say, we need to specify condensing water heaters, because it won't be allowed.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for that, Tom and Dave. I don't know if you guys have any final comments with respect to Amendment 15. I think just one key thing that our mechanical contractors need to be aware of. Dave, what's the most important thing?
One thing I could say is that NRCan and CIPH and boiler manufacturers are actually working together to actually come up with a best practices guide for boiler installs, especially focused on the commercial gas boilers, so that there's sort of how to actually make it work in a retrofit situation. That's probably the biggest issue that's coming up, is the retrofit commercial.
Awesome.
And NRCan's planning on having that available June of this year. So they're trying to get it out right away. So we've been working fairly hard with them to get this going.
Excellent. Tom, any final words?
Yeah, I would concur with Dave comments there. It is, there needs to be careful consideration given to venting. That's, to me, that's the key takeaway from all this. Venting in a retrofit application could be difficult. I hate to make it sound like every single job is going to be a nightmare. That's not true. There's a lot of boilers that are up on a roof, and you've got some short vent length, and replacing the venting really isn't massively burdensome. It's not free, but it's not hugely burdensome. But if you're in those applications where you've got some questions about some vent length, or if you can sidewall vent the thing, pay careful attention to that, because that could be troublesome. But otherwise, no. And I appreciate Doug, you giving us this opportunity to get this out to all of those stakeholders in the industry, because it is important.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave and Tom, both, for sharing your insights into this topic. And those dates are approaching fast, so it's very important that everyone involved in HVAC becomes aware of what's going on. And certainly that's a role the Canadian Hydronics Council is playing for the industry. And of course, I'm sure you would encourage everyone who's watching to get involved in some way in the council. It's beneficial for everyone, I'm sure, overall.
Definitely.
So, gentlemen, thanks again.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.